Hello and welcome. So in last session, we have seen how to get access to Datasphere and SSC, which includes security and administration features. So in this session, we are going to discuss about the space management. Just click on space management. Spaces as part of SAP Datasphere solution are virtual team environments where your administrator has ability to assign users and roles, as well as additional resources or connections to data sources, and you can allocate the storage also. So in SAP Datasphere, all data related workflows start with the selection of a space. So you can see space is a fundamental concept. Okay. Suppose after going into space management, if I want to create a space, let's click on create. Let's create a space called ds_demo. Click on create. We see there are different options here. You see the status is it is still deploying. That's why it's, now it is deployed. So here you can see in the general settings, space ID, space name. If you want to change the name later, you can change. And space status active, space type is SAP Datasphere, created on, deployment status, deployed on. If you want to provide some description, you can give the description here. And translation language, you can select here as English. So there is a help option here. If you click on this help, so the help related to this page will come here, like help topic. You can see if you keep the cursor here, you can see save the changes you have made, deploy if you want to deploy the changes, and space storage, translation. You can see here, choose the language from which business textual information will be translated for SAP Analytics Cloud Stories. And then unlock your space in case, if you want to lock your space or unlock your space, you can do that from here. Like you can click this and yeah, you'll get the more options here. Like, so you can see that. If you want to, put it on hold, you can, lock manually. And then space priority is one more place. These are all the different options. And you can see in storage area, you can see as a DW administrator, you can allocate disk and memory storage to this space. So in our case, it has come as like 2 GB for disk and 1 GB for memory. So let's leave that as this. And if you come to workload management area, you have two: priority and workload configuration. Like space priority. Basically, space priority is nothing but you can set a priority for this space. Suppose if you have multiple spaces created in your data sphere, if you want to give the priority for this space, you can you can change this priority. But you can see here, this area is read only. You cannot change the space priority. Like you can change the space priority from system configuration and workload management. We cannot change here. We have to go into system configuration, workload management, all these things. With the trial versions, you will not get these options. Like you will not have access to system administration. But here we have access, so you can see how to change the space priority here. And the workload configuration, like if I go, yeah, workload configuration. Set limits to amount of memory and threads that space can consume. Like how much, suppose if the threads running in this space, how much memory they can consume, that you can set here. Again, we cannot edit here. We have to go into space configuration, workload management area. So let's go to system configuration and workload management area and see how we can change this. Let's see, going here. I'll close the help here for some time. System configuration. Okay, let me save my space first. Okay. Now go to system configuration. You see there is something called workload management. And that I have my space. Just click on the space. Okay, here you can see priority. You can specify the prioritization of this space when querying the database. You can enter a value from 1 to 8, 1 being the low priority, 8 being the highest priority. Okay, in situation where spaces are competing for available threads, those with higher priority are run before spaces with lower priority. So the threads running in the space which has higher priority, they'll run faster compared to the ones with lower. Like suppose currently we have 5. Let's change this to 6. Yeah, see, you can see I can change here. Earlier it was 5. I change it to 6. Now the second option, workload configuration. It is by default now. The default configuration provides generous resource limits while preventing any single space from overloading. So if you have multiple spaces, it will give like generous resources. Like it will give like similar kind of like neutral. Suppose if I want to do like custom, I have an option here. I can change it to custom. You can see now we have one more, like more. You can set the maximum total thread and memory limits that statements running concurrently in the space can consume. Like you can set the limit here, like either by percentages or by threads. You see there are two threads here, and if you want to change that by percentage, you can keep it to 70 or 75 like this. So enter a percentage between 1 to 100 of the total number of threads available in your tenant setting. So setting the thread limit to low may impact statement performance, while excessively high value may impact the performance of statements in other spaces. So if you keep it as low, your statement performance will be less. But if you keep it high, the other spaces that will become slow. And next one is total statement memory limit. Again, same thing. You can enter value from 0 to 0, no limit. Like if you go to here, you can set by the number, or let's set this to 70. Again here, setting the memory limit too low may impact statement performance, while excessively high may impact performance of statements in other spaces. So these things will be done by your administrator. So for now, let's go back to default. So let's head back to default and save it. So now I go back to my space management. If you come here, my space priority is changed from 5 to 6, and I kept it as default. So there is no change in the workload configuration. This is about workload management option. And let's go to user assignment. In this section, you can add users to this space. Okay, before users, let's discuss about database access. Suppose if you want to expose all new views in this space by default for consumption, modelers like you can check this expose for consumption by default, so that all views will be exposed for consumption. But when you are doing modeling, we have an option that can override. Like when we create an analytical view, analytical model, we will have an option called expose for consumption. There, we can select whether we want to expose or not. So we can override that. So this is about data consumption, and the next option is database users. So here you can create database users. Suppose like create database users to connect external tools to SAP data. If external tools they want to connect to Datasphere, they need the detailed database user and ID, user and password. So you can create that. You can set the privileges to those users to read space data and to create data entities and ingest data. You can do you can give them read access, write access, different kinds of things. Okay. Suppose, let's say, just click on create, what options will come? So you can give database username, and if you want to enable the password, like this one, and read access to the space schema. So you can give either you want to give read access or not. So like allow database users to connect external tools to space schema and read views that are exposed for consumption. So you can give like enable read access. Like there are different access and write access if you want. Like allow the database users to connect to external tools to users OpenSQL schema to create data entities, ingest data for. So either you can choose to give read access or write access by creating the user here. And you can also enable logs, like suppose if you are given write access, so you can enable for the logs for 7 days, so they will be available for 7 days. Okay, now let's come to space auditing. So here we have two options: enable audit logs for read operations, enable audit logs for change operation. If you want to keep the logs, you can enable them for 7 days here. But there is a like warning kind of thing. You can, if you read this, see, audit logs can consume large amount of disk storage in your tenant. It will consume a lot of storage. So if you enable audit policy, you should regularly monitor disk storage usage. So if suppose if you enable, you have to monitor, you have to keep monitoring the disk storage to avoid disk outages, which can lead to service disruption. If you disable the audit policy, all your audit log entries will be deleted. If you want to keep the audit log entries, consider exporting them before you disable. Suppose if you want to disable, then before doing that, just export them. Okay. And let's look at some other options here we have. Okay, if you want to copy this space and create a new space, you can copy. You want to delete, you can delete. But I think we will not be having any access in production systems for this. If you want to log this, you can log. Let's go into monitor option and see what options are there. Okay. Here I can see, okay, disk used for storage, memory used for storage. Okay, and this is here you can see different options like overall table consumption by schema. So if you see this schema, it used 1.6 MB, and overall consumption by table type. The storage type is disk, and used disk is 471 KB. And here this is storage type memory, and used disk is 20. And here you can see memory, and used in memory is 832. And if you come down below section, you see there are some table storage. There are some tables, I think, already. Uh, you can see how much disk storage it consumed, 9 to 94 KB, how much in memory it is consuming. So you can see you have different tables here, which are already available. And if you come down table details, I think, yeah, these are the tables which are available currently. So you can see like table type, like is it stored in disk or in memorial kind of thing, and record count, how much disk storage used, how much memory storage used. So there are different options here under the monitor section. Now let's close the monitoring and go back to our space. And here now let's come to user assignment. Now I want to assign some user. I want to assign my user to this space. Let's click on add. Okay, this is my user ID. Let's select this, click on next. Okay, here you can see the space is not added to any scope role. To be able to add user to space, it must be first added to one or more scope roles. So I'm not able to add the user because the space is not added to scope role. So we have to add the space to some scope roles. Then only we can assign some users to this space. So where can we do that, and what is the scope role? Let's cancel this and let's jump into security. If you go to roles, so here you can see there are some predefined roles given by SAP, and also there are some scoped roles. So our message was saying this space is not assigned to any scoped role. To be able to add users, that scope must be, sorry, that space must be assigned to some scoped role. So here I have some scope roles like data warehouse scope consumer, data warehouse scope integrator, scope modeler, scope space administrator, scope support user, scope viewer. Like there are different scope roles. If I want to work in development, yeah, I think you need to have this modeler scope role, and administrator, support user, or only viewer, consumer. So there are different. And above you can see some roles like DW administrator, modeler, viewer, support user, integrator, catalog user, administrator, catalog, consumer, space administrator. So let's do one thing. Just select any one scoped role. Let's go inside. Okay, here on the right side you can see scopes. Let's click on scopes. You see under available scopes, my space is showing here. We have created this space. So let's select this and save it. Now I have assigned my scope, a space to the scope. Let's go back to roles. You can see here now one scope is there, which means one space is assigned for this scope role. And I can also assign users from here directly. See, I have assigned already my space. Let's go to you see add user to scopes. Let's click that. Here it is showing my ID. Select that. Click next. And this is my space. Next. And save it. Okay. Now I have assigned my space to the scope role, and I have also assigned my user to this space. Now let's go back to roles. I want to see by refreshing once, because now I have created a space, I have assigned that to scope role, and I have also assigned my user. Let's go to space management once, come to user assignment. You can see here my ID, user ID is coming automatically, and it is assigned to this scope role, is scope data warehouse cloud modeler. So I want to check, now I have been assigned to cloud modeler. I want to refresh the browser and see whether I'll get data builder or business builder options. Okay, I don't see any changes. Changes to deploy. Let's click on deploy. It's deployed now. Let's refresh again. I don't see any change. Let's do one thing. Go to security, roles. Let's assign this page to all the scope roles. So you can directly assign by clicking on the scopes. Select the space, save it, and go to users. Let's add my user, save. Let's assign for integrator. Save it, go to users, add user to scopes. Let's add my user. Click on next, save it, go back to roles, assign first space administrator, select the space, save it, go to users, add the users, select user ID, next, next, save, go to roles again. We have one more left. Try two more. Select this, save it, users, add user, select the user, click next, next, save, go to roles, add the space, users, add, save it. Now go to roles. So now I have added the space to all my scope roles, and I also added the user. Let's go to space management and see the changes here. You see now my ID is added to all the scope roles. It's already deployed. Now I want to refresh it and see. Okay, now if you expand the left side panel, you will see I got my data builder, business builder, data integration monitor, connections. So I got multiple other options here after assigning my space to scope roles. And also if you observe, we had general setting, workload management, user assignment, database access. Here something called settings has come. Here you can see in connections. So to create or edit connection, open the connection app from the site navigator or click here. So you can go, it's basically for connections. Initially, we were not having like connections. If you want to connect this data sphere to some other sources, you can do that here. And also something called timetable and dimensions. So SAP will provide this time dimension data, but how we get, I mean, how do we get this data, time data from here? Like when you create a space, you will have option here. Suppose, let's say, you can see changes in this section will be deployed immediately. Create timetables and dimensions to use in your models. We use normally in models to, this time related data. Okay, like date, month, quarter, cal year, cal month, these kind of things. So let's create time dimension, timetable and dimensions. If you click here, you can see. So business name is table. This is the technical name. Here you have an option to choose, okay, from when you want your time data. So let's do one thing. Let's select from 2020 to, let's say, 2030 for our uh, session. Okay, and what will be created? You can see here what and all will be created here. Dimensions. These are all the dimensions. Time dimension year will be created. Time dimension quarter will be created. Time dimension month will be created. Time dimension day will be created. These are all the dimensions which you can see later. And translation tables. Some tables will be created for quarter, month, and day. These are the technical names. Okay. I think these are the views. These are the tables. So let's create. And here we have selected from 2020 to 2030. Let's wait for some time. I think it will deploy these tables. So to summarize, like what we did in this session, we got access to Datasphere, and we were not having any data builder, business builder, data integration and connection options. So we started creating space, and we have seen different options under the space. And after seeing general setting, workload management, space settings, and database access, when we try to add user to this space, it was not allowing because this space is not assigned to any scoped user, scoped role. If you want to assign any user to space, the space must be assigned to scoped role. So we went to security and roles. Therefore, we have assigned our space to all the scoped roles, and we have assigned the user ID. After that, when we refreshed, we got all these options. And when we come back to space management, we were having two extra options like settings, where you have got the connections. If you want to create connections to connect the data sphere to some other sources, you can do that from here or directly from the connections. And timetable and dimensions. Now we created the timetable. Like if you want to change, you can edit later, and if you want to delete, you can delete, you can refresh. So that's about the space concept in DataSphere. How do you create and how do you maintain these different options? I hope you understand now, like what is the space in DataSphere, because this is the fundamental concept. Suppose now I have access to my data builder, right? So when I want to create some object, it's gonna ask, okay, to which space you want to save. Okay, right now we have only one, but I think in real time multiple spaces will be created. So when you create some object, you have to select the space first and you create that. So yeah, that's about the space management. And in the next session, we'll start creating, some tables and all. That's all for this session. And thank you. And I will see you in the next session.